another financial figurine, an income profit manifesting machine. The only value they said I have is green. They called me a fiction, they called me extreme. They called me a pimp, as a matter of fact. They painted me violent, they painted me...
Peace and welcome back. We're mostly talking about racial discrimination in these family courts, in courts in general, in the American Babylonian system in general, but my experience mostly focusing on family courts. And the elephant in the room, you know, feeling like I know this conversation between race is continually having discordance within it, but it's also becoming something that the brown community, the melanated community, the indigenous community, and the European, the white community are having less and less of together in a productive way. And so I think that's a detriment to society, and we need to bring back the conversation in healthy, nonviolent communication, you know, actively positive ways of dialoguing about these things. And so you know, the white community, the race card and all that, and you're sick of hearing it, and you got to put that on the table with, you know, dignity and compassion and humility. And the melanated, the indigenous community and the indigenous nations, the brown nations, need to continue speaking their authentic voice in a way that is inviting and helps to bridge the gaps. No Willie Lynch zone. We're not trying to Willie Lynch any more than it has been done on the people and on the nations of this world. And so we're trying to have healthy dialogue and increase understanding and increase communion and functionality between nations and cultures and individuals and relations all around. So, family courts, racial discrimination, racial prejudice, racial and cultural assimilation, okay? So, this is going to segue right into protected classes, all right? Then we classify everything. And so, protected classes under American United States law. So what's a protected class? We're just going to run through these handful that they acknowledge as protected classes. Race, okay? Are there different races? Is that what racism is? Is discrimination between one race that we can identify and separate from another race? Okay? Color. Turning us back into crayons, right? What is a color? So is that associated to race? That's just its own thing? Am I black? Are we now under color of law? Are you white? Are these legal statuses? Are these adjectives or are they nouns? Do we even know American Grammatica to know which category these words fall into and their relevance to protected classes in this conversation? But color is a protected class. So I have color, I have hue. Does that mean I am a protected class? Are white people a protected class? Okay. Religion. Muslim. Christian, Judeo, right? Ooh, the top religions. Hindu, Indigenous. Okay. Nationality, national origin. What is your nationality? Do you even know what nationality is? Are you a Moor? Are you Italian? Are you Ethiopian? Right? What is your nationality? Are you American? Are we all American? Is a citizen of America a nationality? Questions to ask. Age, okay? Age discrimination. Age is a protected class. Sex is a protected class. Is that gender? Is that, what does sex imply? Male, female, okay? Pregnancy, the plight of the woman. Citizenship, familial status, disability, veteran, and genetic information. All protected classes. Go look it up. What is a protected class in America? Do you fall under any of them? Are you protected? Does it mean anything when we get into court? So let's talk about family court. racial discrimination, protected class. First of all, it feels like you're doing wrong and you're going against the grain and you're, ruffling feathers just to acknowledge something like that. As Indigenous people in this country, that's a foundation of our sentiment, is we go into the day and into American society knowing that there's prejudice against us, knowing that there's racial discrimination, that there's a history of a complex relation between Indigenous people, Moors, melanated people, and European colonizers and immigrants, okay? And the history of America from how it got to where it was to where it is today, and our complex dynamic within that as individuals, as blended ancestors of our elders, right? Now that the cultures and the nations and all of these have mixed over hundreds and hundreds of years. So, are these grievances still legitimate? Do Indigenous people still have these grievances? And what do those complexities bring to the table when it's somebody like myself that's a mixture of Indigenous and European? Okay, and that doesn't even get into the genetics of all of us and how much or how little we really know about the ancestry and much less the origin of where we as a people come from. So, getting back to these courts today, discrimination, racial discrimination, and my experience in these courts, because that is my position, is that the child custody and the family law and the 2% of time that was allotted to me versus the 98% of time that was given to mother, and that there's significant factors with our ethnicity, our nationality, our race, our culture, our ideals. And so that comes into play, and it certainly does for me because I'm the one that received 2% of the time. And so when you have a system that has legal backing to forcefully impose an order which says one parent is going to get 98% of the influence in the time and another parent is only going to get 2% of the influence in the time, what does that mean? What does that mean when the judge is European? And the person that got the 98% of the time, in this case the mother, is also European. And so they have a shared nationality. And then you have an Indigenous mixed Moor who is in there who gets 2% of the time. And I don't care what the difference in nationality is, what the difference in culture is. It's about the discrepancy that is going to remove one and enforce and support another. And so historically with Indigenous people in the country of America, the United States Corp, right, we have a history of, if you're talking about the red Indigenous, the so-called Indian, the natives, the red natives in Indigenous cultures and First Nations of America, it's common knowledge, at least within that culture and hopefully within a degree of European culture, of the assimilation of taking children outside of native culture and native homes and putting them in white European communities far from where their Indigenous inhabitant is, and being raised totally outside of their culture to then be brought back an assimilated being who no longer speaks any Indigenous language, who no longer, for all intents and purposes, has any of the Indigenous culture remaining in them because they were punished systematically through Christian schools and foster homes and these programs that wouldn't let them speak their native tongue or hold their native names. And the transatlantic slave and what we associate with the black Indigenous, the Moors of America and Northern Gate, and what was happening to them, not just post the understanding of whatever we're going to interpret as the transatlantic slave and slavery in America, and destroying the strong male figure through slavery and murder and lynchings and all the things that were happening during those times, much less to the present current day where we see the removal of the brown melanated black man from the family structure through prisons, through the family court systems and the benefit of Title 4D and the support of the mothers and the black women and so-called impoverished communities, regardless of your nation, and then what that has done, not including the standard, the street of what we know happened post, relocation, post-slavery, post-civil rights into the crack era, the government bringing crack into the neighborhoods and programs that we know, COINTELPRO, the fear of the Black Messiah and trying to, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI and the degree that this country, that's what we have to get into, this country. Is that this country? When we're talking about the power in the government that we know to exist and the programs they had against indigenous cultures alike, the American Indian movement, the Black Panthers, and any black progressive movement, so-called black people, and the separation and through the rewriting of history of even these indigenous cultures to how the average person today even sees the history of America. That is, assimilation. That's genocide. That exists right now, and that's conversations that the average person, we don't see eye to eye, especially when you get to the difference between Europeans and the various nations and the European nations to the various nations of the brown, melanated, indigenous, First Nations. It's not something like we all on the same page right now. We're really far from it. It's more like we've gone along to get along in the name of trying to survive the machine that's going too, just to be able to keep up to date with being so-called free people who got to pay for land just to be. We got to pay. We all got to pay. We know that. We got to be on the hamster wheel. And that in itself is allegedly not slavery and human trafficking, like to force people just to owe somebody debt currency just to be alive. So that is the broad, the macro, to bring it down to the micro, which is only partially to dissect the racial dynamics and getting back to family court in my situation. And so in my case, where you remove the indigenous man from the child's life, and now I can't expose her to my culture, and this is what's been going on in this system for hundreds of years, right? And so what does that mean? It means that there's still cultural assimilation. That if there's laws and statutes that literally support this European woman, we have to look at why it's so extreme to that side. Is that moral? Is that lawful? Is that ethical? Is that a violation of rights, constitutional or inalienable, creator-given, or otherwise? And so, in my case, I feel like because I've been removed 98% of the time, I see the effects of the impossibility to pass down my culture, to pass down who I am. And I think it doesn't matter what nationality you have, what you view your culture to be. I think the Europeans, it's a conversation we have to have, because the European men that are in this position, because it's not like they're running away with these great family court orders, but historically it still serves us to acknowledge the difference that the European men are going through, and the European women, and just different nationalities and genders are experiencing in these family courts in general. But we have to look at the statistics as well, the tendencies. Are white women getting the same treatment as melanated women? Are white men getting the same treatment as melanated men? Are women getting the same treatment as men? Are men getting the same treatment as women? We have to look at these and compare and contrast, and look at ourselves and what our values are, and then discuss them, put them on the table and say, does this reflect who we are and what we value? Can we do better as people within our own culture, within shared cultures? And so I know with my case specifically, it's real hard to point at an individual, which will be the judge, but there's a series of judges. I've had 5 judges over the 4 years. And so is it all of them? Do these become strong accusations and things that are hard to prove, to say that racial discrimination is a part of this process? with this person specifically against me specifically, right? And racial discrimination starts to become statistics and numbers. Why all the black men disproportionately in prison? Why all the fathers missing from their children's lives, reduced to a child support ideology that's just money-based, that has nothing to do with the infinite ways that you support a child that have nothing to do with the currency or debt currency or a debt to one side of the parentage, right? That's wild. And so all these are factors. The racial discrimination doesn't take away from the factor of gender discrimination that men are going through, right? Both of these can exist in the same place at the same time and be factors. And one can be more. And one can be more at one time and then less at another time, or shift. Because we're in an ebb and flowing plane of existence where life shifts and you have to acknowledge it. And absolutes are dangerous and hard, scary to use in the real world. So that doesn't mean that it's not okay and we shouldn't be supported. And what that means for the individuals who are in these courts, who are allegedly innocent till proven guilty, and in family courts, there's not even a claim against you. You're just in there losing rights, and you haven't even been charged with any violation of the civil structure of the so-called society you're allegedly an equal part of. And so I think that's bizarre and wild in and of itself. I don't know that society and the body politic agreed on that and said that's how we do things. I think just like legislation and Congress, like most of these laws and statutes and procedures and bills are done by a small group of people who allegedly represent the voice and the understanding of the body politic at large. I have had very little contact with these representatives, from my doing and from their doing, from the system as it's designed to the accessibility to actually reach these people. I think it's a joke and a scam. I think it's a scam for everybody, but especially as a brown, melanated, indigenous male, I certainly have never felt equal representation in like this structure and this government and these representatives and these laws and statutes and ordinances and police and all that. The militarized America represents my culture and my nation's ideology and sentiments and beliefs. And so is it a race thing? You know, you talk to a lot of indigenous people, we have a different perspective than the Europeans, generally speaking. So in these family courts, of course I think it's an issue. I'm trying to raise it as an issue. It's not about that I need to be a protected class, because what class shouldn't be protected? Why limit it? I mean, that gets into all these identity politics and the LGBT and, you know, the trans and the 8 million pronouns now being used that are getting so absurd. The other extreme, where identity politics have 8 million classifications for what you need to call everybody, and down to you need to address somebody by who they are and you need to know their name and their makeup and how they prefer to be referred to socially, or you're now involved in some other crazy form of hate speech. Extremes on either end start to get really dangerous. And so we can't use that though as an excuse not to be dialoguing and not to be talking. You know, the trans, all the pronouns and gender politics, like, I'm okay with all the talking. I'm okay with anybody putting their perspective on the table and their requests and their sentiments and their intentions and hopes and dreams. I'm not into domination of any sort. I mean, once the non-aggression principle is violated, I'm for domination. I'm for then we have to have a means to protect self-defense as well as protect others, have some civil social order. But, you know, I think generally speaking, the non-aggression principle, voluntarism, you be good, go out and do good, be free to be who you are. If you want to be part of the public and have a tax system that builds stuff for the public, cool, do it voluntarily. Don't dominate people. I think taxation is theft for the most part. And so get back to loving everybody, not about their class, about humans, about the diversity that is the body politic of humanity, and then beyond into the animals that we share this time and space with, right? Should we just be thoughtful, moral, civil, loving, intelligent beings because we know we're connected and we know it helps us to do that. So within that, where we see it not happening, we try to acknowledge it respectfully, with dignity, with humility, not with damnation and the type of judgment that makes people feel like you have people feeling in this culture, that we send them into cages and treat them bad like animals without any humanity as a form of punishment to supposedly correct or, you know, deter future people from repeating those behaviors, as though that's working. And we can see how much of a failure that is. That doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater and have no system, but to have one that's in 2017 totally inhumane and cruel and lacking all heart and wise transformative alchemy to heal people and have people truly learn from mistakes and damage and injury. Like, it's sad, and people walk around like the state of this justice system and the legal system and the prosecution, and then what we do to those prosecuted is in any way reflective of who we claim we are as loving, intelligent people. And so we need to put names to faces. There's very little Hitlers and Stalins, and that's the reality, because most of this culture today, they don't even know Stalin. They know Hitler, and that's crazy. If we're talking just about wicked people and racial discrimination, and, you know, that was a man to his own nation. Like 60 million people, and the average person out here, the socialists, tons of socialist people that really think they're Marxists and socialists today, and they don't even really know much history of anything. And they clamp onto these terms and ideologies that they've like dipped the tip of their pinky toe in, and just need some self-identity to feel loved and part of a collective and something of importance, which we need. And we need to be doing better as families and parents and community members, directing things of value that have substance, and get past the MTV culture and the McDonaldization of society, and get off the GMO where all our genetics are changing to mush anyhow, right? And then you question anything, much less racial discrimination, and the average conversation, people don't even want to be in conversation about things that are deep like that, or sensitive, or some of the most important things we need to be hashing out philosophically as a people, so we don't destroy our families, our communities, and our nations. We're at war right now, 2017. You know how many wars are going on? We're warring. Oh, this is the state of civilized planet Earth. And that's on the macro and the micro. And when you get into family courts, it's these individual people that we need to put names to the faces. And so when you feel, and that's not a lynching, that's not some mob mentality, that's for the intention of healing, of saying, no, what you're doing is wrong. You are. This is cultural assimilation. You're depriving me of my right to pass on my cultural genes for all intensive purposes, my customs, my habits, my beliefs, my perspectives, my style, my flair, my energy, my way to speak, right? You're denying all of that. And what else could that be but cultural genocide, racial discrimination? That's what it is. It's just discrimination, period. And that's why even above that, it's just lack of intelligence, lack of wise counsel, lack of family values, a lack of justice, lack of all these things. That's why we get law. That's why we talk about justice and boundaries and morality and punishment and worst case scenarios and best case ideals. And so we got something to work toward and something to try to prevent. And do unto others. That's the golden rule. Do you treat your own children, you treat your family like this, the way we're doing in these courts? Even for some of the worst things outside of family law, like if we're talking about criminal stuff and true injury or murder and things like that, or we still got to find ways to deal with our shadow self, the dark side of the psyche that exists in all of us, that most people have done their best to tame and nurture and turn into good people most of the time. Right? So we all acknowledge our fallibility and our hypocrisy while asking for help and compassion and forgiveness, and trying to continually better self. And self as the microcosm of the macro, which is the nation. So we become good nations. So back to racial discrimination, family court. It's ingrained in this system. Let's have the conversation, European Americans. Let's talk about color of law, black males, the war on words, the war on the word black, the war on the word white, legal status, and what they're doing to us intentionally. A lot of these people are in the know. Most of the average public, especially the Europeans, are not. And so I have compassion, because there's been a war on all of us to make us all ignorant and confused and babble. We're in Babylon, walking around babbling. And so there's an agenda to have us be in this position, to be drinking the fluoride and eating the GMOs and fake food, having your vibration lowered to such a degree that you don't even know self. So that's why we raise awareness, and that's why we start by trying to lead by example with self, so that we're not walking around more hypocritical than less. That our vibration in our body and our mind and soul and spirit is in check. And then we try to speak with integrity, speak truth to power, and always follow truth and be honest to who you are and what you're feeling. And if you speak it and you share that with the world with respect for other people and other boundaries and good intention, that should be received. We should be able to do that as a people and share who we are and have good, productive dialogue and actually find some common ground. We have a lot of common ground. Believe it or not, I believe we have more in common with each other than we do differences. And our differences don't have to dominate each other and lead to war and resentment and aggression and retaliation. Revenge, which demands atonement and forgiveness and making right for what is wronged. Because we haven't done any of that, for the most part, in America. And it needs to be discussed on so many levels. My level right here is family law. Oregon, Clackamas. What's going on there is crazy. I'm not protected right now. I'm scared just to ask for protection. I'm scared to have the Supreme Court had anybody look at it. I don't even know what good it would do to have the Supreme Court look at it, because I don't think they're from my culture either. I don't think we share the same nationality. If we do, I don't think we share the same opinions and beliefs and values. Certainly family values. And then probably cultural values. So I need more of my culture part of this process. I'm not saying that to separate Europeans or white people, because I got white Europeans that are my family. And that is part of my culture. That is part of my nationality. That's why I'm not about Willie lynching. When I speak on race and culture and mixing and gender and discrimination and power struggles and history, I do it because all that's in my genetics. Because I have to battle that in self, first and foremost. In my battle with myself, I try not to make violent. I try to be peaceful with the way I speak to myself. And the way I look at my lefts and rights and ups and downs. And the complexity that is me, the micro, that is the macro, that is the reflection in you back to me when I then go and engage with you. And see myself. And see what I've already learned and what I need to learn. And what I need to teach. And we do that forever. And then we transition into the mystery and the unknown. And we try to do that with humility. That's why we try to treat each other with grace and compassion. It's because that great unknown, we don't know what that means. And so we try to have humility while we walk on this earth so that we're not pompous. So when we reach that transition time, we can do it with grace ourselves, and a good conscience, and a good spirit, and peace of mind, surrounded by family and loved ones. So we need to create that everywhere, in these family courts and in life. So racial discrimination, it's going on, y'all. It's going on in my case, and I hope you care. And then I hope we can create dialogue and brainstorm something to do, because I matter just as you matter. What you go through matters to me. And if we're doing injury to you, I know it impacts me. I know hurt people hurt people. So we want to create a lot less hurt people. We want to create healthy, vibrant, passionate, enthusiastic people. That benefits all of us. That's why I don't say to the judge that I feel racially discriminated against to condemn him in a way that is only going to punish him. I want us to grow from it. I want him to change his ways. I want him to learn, so that we have a meeting of the minds, so that this doesn't happen to any more Indigenous people. And vice versa, if the power shifts, that power doesn't then empower somebody else to impose that onto another nation of people, or a class of people, or a style of people, or people in general. That's why the love revolution is at the top of the apex, because we treat ourselves and each other with love and respect. I've talked about the golden rule, not necessarily do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because you're not my culture. So I need to do unto you the best I can what your culture is, what your preferences is. And you try to put yourself in my shoes so you can do that to me. When I walk into these courts, they don't do that at all. Just like when I walk into what I label as the old paradigm that exists now, we just don't like to use the word white supremacy because we don't think it's supreme. It's not supreme over Indigenous philosophy, Indigenous cultures, Indigenous love and values. So we use words like white domination, European domination, cultural domination. In America, that's European immigrants and colonizers. I think a small percent malicious and barbaric, and a large percent just humans that are looking for a better life. The land of milk and honey, opportunity. People still look at America as that, because it is still, with all this history, all this colonialism and oppression, it's still an alchemical wonderland, where with good mind and good spirit and good center and control of your mind and what you put into your body and the amount of options you have to make choices, what we can manifest here is unbelievable, unimaginable. We don't know our potential. And so that's what I'm about. That's what the love revolution's about for me, is encouraging the species on Earth to reach their highest potential and be brilliant, and then look at it in awe. I look at it in awe right now with all this dysfunction and muck and demons and damage and pain and hardship and heaviness. And I still look at that like, wow, it's beautiful, it's amazing. Think of what we've been gifted, wherever it comes from. The great mystery. And so we give thanks. That's why we give thanks. That's why I give thanks. And I do give thanks. I give thanks for all this experience. That's why I try not to let the courts bring me down and break my spirit, because I do believe in purpose. And I do believe I have a soul purpose. So when I wake up, that I have value to myself, regardless if this power structure shares my values, or sees value in me, or tries to take a value away from me. My value is powerful. My manifestation is powerful. So I wake up and I center with that, with gratitude, and give thanks for the breath. So that's how I move forward. I encourage you to join with me. Take a deep breath. Inhale. exhale, and think about all that you have to be thankful for. I have so much to be thankful for. I'm thankful for my voice. I'm thankful for your ears. I'm thankful for our communion, which we do have. And so I give thanks for that. And I hope to build on that and build on myself. Knowledge of self and knowledge of others. It's a love revolution. My name is MCAD, aka Rad Dad. If you got something to donate, please do, because these courts are sucking my money. And I barely got enough money just to do my music, much less maintain my domain. So any and all help is and has been and always will be appreciated. Give thanks, and I send the same returned energy and love and positivity to you. Let's keep building, world. Rhymesforthetimes.com. It's a love revolution. Peace and love.
It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here. Who's that? It's love. Can you feel it coming through that conscious revolutionary music? Yeah, you can feel it in your veins.
Hey, give thanks for those who donated and ask for ways to donate and support and help the cause. I set up a PayPal account for donations, so if you want to donate, you can do so at lovefurpapa@gmail.com. That's our PayPal account, and that's love, the number 4, POPPA@gmail.com. If you got $1 to spare, every dollar helps. We just want to say thank you to those who have supported in every way that they have. Peace and love.